Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of Liberal Arts MBA. This is Choosing an Adventure. We're featuring Sam Friedman today and get to say hello to Jacob Sager and Sam Friedman live and in color. My name is Sarah Sands. I'm coming to you live from Houston, Texas today, where I am practicing an adventure, choosing an adventure of gratitude, where I have recovered from my bout of breakthrough COVID, hashtag get vaxxed, everybody. Saved my life and probably those around me. So if you haven't done it yet, everybody's doing it. It's like prom night before the vaccine, get on it. And I'm also grateful for this little break of conversation away from cleaning survey data. Jacob.
Well, I'm your other co-host, Jacob Sager. I am not too far away from Sarah. In terms of the whole planet Earth, I'm in Austin, Texas, which is quite a while away from Houston, Texas.
Way to keep out the space part of this early.
Yeah, I always have to bring it in. And I'm just healthy, and I got my vaccine at Gregory Gymnasium at the University of Texas. That was kind of the first time I had been at the gym at UT since I was a student, and I felt like an old man. So I just wanted to share that right now. And we're joined by a friend of mine, a good friend, somebody I've known for a long time, Mr. Sam Friedman, who down here. You can introduce where you're from right now. I mean, like where you're from, but like where you are on planet Earth.
I am close to Jacob by geography, but probably equidistant from Jacob and Sarah by traffic. I'm in South Africa, on planet Earth.
That's when we have those different measures.
Mm-hmm.
That was honestly like the thing that really got me is when I realized that I could sit in traffic in Houston and still go a much further distance in the same amount of time than if I was like stuck in subway traffic in New York City, where at the end of that, I still only went like maybe 5 or 6 miles over the course of 45 minutes. So I think like the space-time continuum and traffic is like really a fungible idea out here.
Very much so.
Well, we are Liberal Arts MBA, as I said, and this show today is all about choosing your own adventure. And per usual, we are a show about cultivating spaces where individuals are empowered to pursue journeys that are meaningful in life to them, that they define, redefining the career path from education and business to college and career. And you can find us on where you can find everything else in the universe these days. We are on Twitter and Instagram as Liberal Arts MBA. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, also Liberal Arts MBA. And please connect with us on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Follow us, but particularly on LinkedIn, because we would love to start doing this live from our shared LinkedIn page. So yes, that's where you can find us. And when you find us, we have a brief survey now, a community engagement survey. Jacob and I have talked about this before. We are growing. We want to make this one of many projects that we offer you. So please take our survey so we know how to serve you, our community, even better in the future. There are only 4 episodes left of this season of Liberal Arts MBA. So tell us what we should do next.
Yeah, we want to hear from everyone. Sarah, as a brilliant researcher, has structured our questions so that your time is well spent and we can get down to some really great information that you can share with us. So you'll find the links to those available through our social accounts. It's a Google form survey. It's good. It's good. We'd really like you to participate.
It's nice that those 11 years collectively I've spent in higher education and all the reverse dowry that is my student loan debt really paid off to make that 3-minute community engagement survey for us. I'm sure Sam can relate to that feeling.
Yes. It's funny how things work out.
So let me introduce Sam formally a little more extensively than I did just a moment ago. Mr. Sam Friedman we have here who's joining us here today. Sam, you're born in San Antonio or the greater San Antonio area?
I was born in San Antonio. My family moved to Fort Worth when I was 2. So I grew up in like middle school and elementary school in Fort Worth and moved back to San Antonio for high school. But I consider myself someone from San Antonio. I'm much more San Antonio than I am Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm. This is the most Texas conversation we've had on this show yet. I love it. I love every part of this Texas conversation. So I had the great pleasure of meeting Sam Friedman when we were 18 years old as freshmen at the University of Texas. And Sam was a math major. But very quickly thereafter, Sam ended up double majoring. He got a BA in math from the College of Natural Science and a BA in English from the College of Liberal Arts from the University of Texas. Right there after graduating, he packed up in the same semester, the same week pretty much, and moved his way up to Michigan, where he was working for a medical billing technology. Wisconsin. I'm so sorry. Product of the Texas education system here. I knew that he moved to Wisconsin. I've known that a million billion times, and yet I get it wrong every single time in my mind. We got a hookem here. Some Texas pride is a comment that just came in from
my
Jason
mom
Gibbons.
went there, so I'm allowed to do this. I'm part of the UT family.
So yeah, right. He moved up to Wisconsin. He was working medical billing for a few years, and then he found himself back in Texas, where he was going to renew himself as a student and getting another undergraduate degree in engineering. But as we'll talk about today, that has actually grown into a much bigger journey that's leading Sam into becoming a Ph.D. And going through kind of multiple institutions in order to achieve that. So we'll talk about that today. So that's my introduction of Sam. And one other thing I just want to add that applies to the three of us here, that, you know, it's not just the Texas thing now, but Sam and Sarah are the eldest siblings of 4. I'm the youngest of siblings of 4, but they're the eldest. So I hope, I feel there's a maturity and leadership that you're bringing to the table today, Sam.
Sam and I are the most mature.
Yes.
A fun fact about Jacob and I being siblings of 4 is that Jacob and I had a phone call when we were about 15 years old. And Sam, I think you'll appreciate this, knowing Jacob for as long as you have. We realized at the age of 15 that we had both developed theories of personality development based on siblings of 4. Yeah. And so actually we had like each, without talking to each other, developed like a prototype of 8 different people based on like the 4 people in each family.
Yes, I get that 100%.
Yeah.
It hasn't been peer reviewed, but it's definitely stood up against a lot of scrutiny in my life.
Yeah. So I think maybe the 3 of us need to like write that book at some point.
Yeah, and a lot of lived experience.
And one more fun fact about Sam that I'd like to put here and do a shout out is Sam is recently engaged and will be getting married this year to his beautiful and wonderful fiance, Liana Garb, whom I also know. And so I just shout out to Liana. And
thanks.
Sarah had this fantasy.
Sorry, go on, Jacob.
Well, Sarah had this fantasy that you and I would talk about wedding plans. We could kind of like flip the gender roles here. And she could be like, that's boring. You boys are talking about wedding planning. But
we're going to get into the fun part of the show now.
Yeah.
So as always, when we start out the show, we invite our guest lecturers to join us in a little bit of liberal arts and MBA, topical literature, if you will. Were this a college course, this would be the part where your professor's like, we're going to talk about the things we have to talk about today before we get to the things that are more fun to talk about. But this is fun too. So today's liberal arts quote is one that I picked out, and it's specifically for the 3 of us as Jews, but also Sam, whose family is from Lithuania, and Sam and Jacob took a Jewish literature class in college. And so this is from the book Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer. And the quote is, I have learned many momentous lessons from your writing, Jonathan. One lesson is that it does not matter if you are guileless or delicate or modest. Just be yourself. And this quote speaks to me today because, we've done 8 episodes, and we are all 3 English majors here, which is the first time we've had this. But I think writers talking about writing in their writing is like so meta. And I love that. And also just like, we are essentially storytelling in our conversations with each other today. And what does it mean to tell stories that are both fact and fiction based on what we recall from our lives? And how does that show up as our authentic selves here? And perhaps that is the most important thing, not what is true and what is not true, but how does that define who we are as ourselves?
I love the meta-ness of this quote. I'm going to put it back on the screen real quick. But just for anyone who hasn't read the book, Jonathan Safran Foer, the writer, is telling the story in which he is a character going back to Europe to visit the decimated village that his grandparents had been in, that was decimated from the Holocaust in World War II. And in the book, at one level of the novel, he's there, and it is not unlike, in a way, Seinfeld and Jerry Seinfeld's character in his self-titled show. There is actually this, like, I'm kind of drawing out an idea about this recently, of the Jew in their own story. But in this example is the best example, is like, you don't have to be modest in your writing about yourself if you're really pointing towards the story or the truth you're trying to get at. Matter of fact, what does he say? Like, you don't need to be guileless or delicate or modest. Just be yourself. And that there is, there's this thought that, like, through the process of fiction, you actually are reaching real truth. And there isn't necessarily real truth that can be reached otherwise. So I really like that part, because it is, when you say it's meta, I mean, it's super meta, because at that point it's a character writing the novelist's character, right? It's super meta.
Yeah. Especially if you've read the book, Everything is Illuminated. It's not, it's a novel, but even the way it's written is so unique and different, right? The font changes. There's the style of the way the text is displayed is unique, but it's the whole, the form follows the function, right? You get the sense of being there in that village just by reading it. The authenticness.
Yeah. So after we do the liberal arts nugget, we like to go into our MBA tidbit. And so for today, I'm wearing my Firefly shirt. I recently visited Firefly. So I wanted to actually do a brief overview of Firefly Aerospace, which is one of the big companies in rocketry today. Most people are most familiar with the top names out there. But Firefly is really growing. So I want to go over their history because I think it's interesting. Firefly was founded in 2014 by Tom Marcusic. I spelled his name from memory here, so apology, Tom, if you're watching and I spelled your last name wrong. The name for this business, Firefly Aerospace, came to him because he was watching fireflies, and he realized that once there's more rockets going in and out of space, that the night sky might start looking like it's flickering with fireflies. But what was interesting about Marcusic was he worked throughout the aerospace industry prior to starting this company, including working for Virgin Galactic. So as soon as he started the company, he was taken to court being accused of stealing intellectual property. Now, regardless of any of that, the court decided that he did destroy evidence, and so that they forced the company to sell off all of their assets at the time. However, with all that, with like completely having this company just gutted by the courts and whatnot, they went and like had to get rid of things that they worked really hard on as a company. They went and gathered everything that they could. They bought it all back at auction, brought in new capital, and just refounded the company the next year. Right now, Firefly it's a new company, but it's the same company and it's on the same mission. And they, at the beginning of the year, were given, I think, $1 billion contract to participate in the in NASA's Artemis lunar landing missions that'll take place in the mid-2020s. So I wanted to talk about Firefly. There's a piece of this reconstruction that I want to draw out later when we talk about the second half of Sam's academic career. And when he starts getting messed around about credits by some of the institutions that the story of Firefly made me think of. But I'm glad you recognized that I was wearing the shirt and the logo, Sam, because you are a rocket scientist in training.
Sam, are you familiar with Firefly and their work? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
What are my thoughts on Firefly?
Yeah.
It's very exciting. I mean, I've looked at the company. I've looked at their stuff online. It's very exciting stuff. They're building smaller rockets with smaller payloads, still orbital, but not as big as the current SpaceX rockets. They're trying to find the middle ground between like the very low payload to high payload. They're trying to find a medium payload space, and but they're building this lunar lander, which is completely new. So it's very real aerospace, very exciting, very new. I mean, and it's right here in the suburbs of Austin. So it's very exciting. It seems like a very, very exciting company.
I raised my hand because I'm a good student. And also, as I have gone through this process of higher education for many years and also humbled myself in my career, I've gotten very good at asking the really basic questions that I have like just admitting I don't know anything. And I do not know anything about rocket science other than like, it looks dope. And it looks hard, and you don't want me to build anything because I broke a bridge in like high school, middle school, trying to build like a wooden bridge. So you don't want me building things. But what is payload, or should we save that question for later? What does that mean?
That's a good question. So the payload is what the rocket is actually putting into space. It's what it's putting into space. So it could be a satellite. It could be a capsule with people in it. It's what is trying to get into outer space, or either orbital or suborbital, or try to go to Mars. So the whole trick to rocket science is it takes a lot of energy to get into orbit. And so if you look at a big rocket, most of it, like 90% of that, is just the fuel to get fast enough to go into orbit. Only the very top part is the actual payload, the satellites, whatever you're trying to get there. Most of it is just getting to orbit. The payload is the point of getting to orbit.
Got it. And so the idea that they could build like smaller rockets essentially that are still able to take like a high payload is actually very interesting, because that means that you can like be more efficient and economic in like the actual size and what you're building, and still have quite a lot of impact in being able to get up there and like drop off a satellite. Did I understand that?
Yes, exactly. That's 100% right.
Yeah, I would, from a lot of the stuff I'm reading nowadays, that one of the big motivations is money, right? To charge less and be able to do it for less money. But another big motivation with these companies these days is they're building different. They want, by doing smaller rockets and looking into, just having new knowledge for fuels, to be more environmentally considerate. I'm going to say considerate instead of friendly here. Considerate with what's being produced. But I love this payload conversation. But let's get into just Sam.
Like Sam, into the history? I love it.
You are our payload. We are taking you into orbit, or maybe you're our rocket taking us into orbit.
That's what we say to people on Saturday nights. Totally kidding. Only a little bit.
So, like, kick it off. Let's start with undergraduate. Tell us about going to undergraduate, how you started with one major and moved into two majors.
So I went to high school in San Antonio. I ended up going to UT Austin for undergrad, and I came in as a math major, and I didn't really know that that's what I wanted to do. They made us pick a major when we came in, and so I picked math because I liked math. I liked my calculus teacher in high school, and I thought I would enjoy it. I did not think I wanted to be an engineer. There's the School of Engineering. There's like mechanical, chemical engineering, like civil engineering, aerospace engineering. But in a lot of those departments, you don't get a lot of electives. There's a strict course requirement, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room in what classes you can take. And I didn't like that. I wanted to explore the liberal arts. I wanted to explore college. I wanted to take a whole bunch of random classes. With engineering, I couldn't do that. So I decided to do math, and I stuck with it. Turns out it's what I really enjoyed, and I'm really happy I did that.
So at what point, though, did you add on the second major? Like, what was going on that it started to became congruent to you?
So I think the second semester of college, I was looking at my degree plan, and I saw that at the rate I was going, taking a handful of math classes a semester, I had all these extra courses available, all this extra time to take other stuff. And I had AP credits from high school that I didn't have to take so many classes anymore. And I thought, why don't I just combine all of these random courses into one coherent second degree? And I liked reading. I liked writing. I thought that in my college application process that I had such a hard time writing my college entrance essays that I should probably get better at that. And so I wanted to pick a major that I could work on my writing. And I thought about philosophy or history, but I decided on English because I thought it'd be great to not only take some writing classes, but then just get a whole education in literature and culture along with it. So I tacked on a second major in English. I joined the College of Liberal Arts. I started taking classes in the six-pack, and it was great. A lot of my most memorable courses in college were from my English degree.
Mm-hmm.
When you added that second major, math and English, like what were some of the things that really stood out to you as the differences in those programs and the approaches to thinking and learning and what those classes looked like?
Well, there were the obvious differences. And the obvious differences was in my math classes, I was in the RLM building, which is the really a 17-story tall building made in the 1970s. In the corner of campus, it's kind of bland looking. The courses were lecture-based, and more than half men in the courses. There were definitely, it was definitely gender diverse, but more heavily weighted towards men. And then I went from that to my English courses in the six-pack buildings built in the 1930s or 40s, really nice, renovated, very welcoming type atmosphere. And the courses.
Yeah, it's a very, I just want to note on that architecture, since I was also at UT. When you say the functional architecture of RLM, I mean, it's just this ugly brick. I mean, I wouldn't say it's ugly, but it's just functional. Versus the main liberal arts six-pack is, it's called Spanish Renaissance. It's bigger stones. It's got the beautiful, like, orange-red tile roof. And really, I'm totally with you. There's, architecture really affects the environment. You feel different. Feel very different in that loving space versus the functional space. Exactly.
There's the grassy area, like the quad in between the buildings where people are just like sitting down, hanging around. That doesn't exist. At least it didn't exist near the math buildings when I was there. They have since built nicer, cooler engineering buildings. But that's after I was gone. But another thing that was very different from my English courses was that they were very discussion based. So in many cases, we would take our desks and put them in a circle and talk about the books that we had read, one person after another, instead of a lecture. And then there were also many more women in my courses than in my math courses. I think my first semester of taking English class, I was in a Victorian lit class, and I was one of only two men in a class of 20, I think. Which is great. It was really nice having those two experiences in college.
Yeah. And I think it's like what stands out to me in that one, like clearly gender diversity and diversity of all sorts, neurodiversity and racial and ethnic diversity and socioeconomic class is so important. But like, I feel like those things really need to mix across subject areas, and to some extent colleges are getting better at, and to some extent they're not, and we're stuck and we need a lot of help. The other thing that's like so interesting to me in your choice to go and do English because you want it to get better at writing is that we don't talk about that with science and math majors and engineering majors very much. Is that actually, like, you know, even if you end up in industry, a big part of what you have to do is be able to write and communicate well, and be able to like read text and translate it for other people to understand and digest it. And we just don't encourage science and math people to choose the path that you like found was interesting to you and you wanted to choose, and to encourage them to become better writers.
Yeah, definitely getting better at communicating is like an afterthought in many cases towards math and science people, because there's so much math and science to learn. I mean, the field is so broad, no matter what you want to go into. There's always something more to learn.
I remember when I was undergraduate at UT, my friends in engineering, there was a course that freshmen in engineering had to take on communication and writing. And the thing about that course that I remember everyone talking about it was I'll say it was a basic communication course. It was like a very freshman level, even in a way a little bit lower. And so the students had one of two perceptions in it. One was a lot of these students were, had surpassed that skill getting into college. So they didn't need that class. It was easy. It was a blow off. The other half of people are so busy with engineering that maybe they need it. Maybe they could get a lot of value, but they don't have the time for it because they're busy on their engineering degree. And this is that one course everyone talks about as being the annoying course you have to take. And so then there's never a discussion on just being a writer or learning how to communicate, because it's just about this credit, and this credit sucks,
Yeah. I think in grad school, they try, at least from my experience in grad school, and then later I can talk about how I went back to undergrad to take engineering courses, but a lot of
we're getting there.
Yeah, a lot of the work is project based, and you're working in groups, and you're presenting your projects to the rest of the course either through a presentation or like slides, or you're showing a demonstration. And so I think a lot of the communication skills are built with that method, which both helps with your engineering skills, but also with your just general people skills, I think, especially because in graduate school, a lot of people, most of the people in graduate school in the engineering department aren't even from America. So there's not only, just people that are science people that aren't good at communicating in general, but there's can be a language barrier or a cultural barrier that it can be difficult to get across. And those kinds of presentations in grad school really help.
One thing that I want to reflect on before we move on to the study abroad portion of this, which for anyone who has listened to this show up to now knows that this study abroad part was coming for sure. But you mentioned that you had taken a number of AP courses, and you got to college and you had the credit, and you realized that gave you the freedom to take a lot of courses that you otherwise wouldn't have taken. And I think that's really interesting. I had that experience as well of getting to college, and we talk a lot about privilege on the show, and the privilege of being able to do a full 4 years or then some of college, to have the resources and the finances and the time in one's life to do that. But I found that so many people were talking about AP credits as a way to rush through college and not have to stay and immerse yourself in the learning. And that I was quite like you, that I, saw this opportunity to stay and to learn more because you had these AP credits. And what did you take that you otherwise wouldn't have taken?
So, I got my AP credits through, I think, U.S. history and government, and I took Latin in high school, very big proponent of Latin. And so I didn't have to take as many foreign language credits. And so I got to, I think how it worked is you had to take so many of social sciences, so many different categories, but you could choose whichever category you wanted. And so I think one of the categories that I took in my cultural degree group was this class on Russian and Eastern European history and culture, which was really interesting. It was my freshman year. It was a survey course where we talked about all kinds of history and art and language of Russia, Central Europe, Southern Europe, Central Asia. I remember the first 2 weeks of class, I had to take a quiz and memorize all the capitals of all of the countries of the former Soviet republics and what languages and religions were in all those countries, which I still somewhat remember today, which on the Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and there's a few others, Uzbekistan, all the different capitals in that area. I took that. That was really interesting. I really loved that. We got to read some novels and some nonfiction from that era, which was very good. I took a seminar class in history of the banjo. No, Jacob is smiling, wants me to get here. I took a class in history of the banjo. The UT had this group of seminar classes for freshmen to take to get exposed to different areas of college, of school. And this was one of them. And I thought, this looks interesting, which it was. And half the course was learning about music of bluegrass and music from the southern, United States, and Flatt and Scruggs. And I had this new appreciation for bluegrass and country music that I did not have before by far. Plus, we were supposed to take banjo lessons. Like they gave us each a banjo to learn from. And so I had a banjo in the corner of my dorm room as a freshman, which was everyone, that's the first thing they asked when they came into my room. What is that doing there? And I have to explain that's for my class that I'm taking. But I still remember it, like to this day. Like it was memorable.
It would have been cool if you took it down and then started playing the riff from Stairway to Heaven.
No, he needs to play Freebird.
Right.
The professor, like I remember at the very end of the course, as if to finally like reward us for sitting through this course, he played the theme to Deliverance, like the dueling banjos, for our class.
So
one of the most well-known, bluegrass pieces from pop culture. So I never really learned how to play the banjo. I don't play the guitar. I could not play. If you knew how to play the guitar, you could probably learn the banjo pretty easily, but I didn't know either. So,
So you went abroad while you were in college as well. You took a semester, 2 semesters?
I did 1 semester abroad. I really wanted to study. I wanted to study abroad, see what that was like. And my goal was to go someplace a little bit non-conventional, like to go a little bit off the beaten path when I can. And I had decided to go somewhere in Europe, but I wanted to go maybe to Scandinavia or Central Europe or Eastern Europe. And I found a few places. I almost went to Finland, actually, or Sweden. But I decided on this program in Budapest called Budapest Semesters in Math. It's this independent math program that's well known among people studying pure math or going to getting PhDs in math. People from all over the country and Canada go on this study abroad program in Budapest, where this program, they bring in Hungarian math professors to teach you courses, like real advanced math courses in Budapest. So I took like combinatorics, I took algebra, I took a bunch of other courses. There was a class in problem solving, which was, they gave us like very, very tricky math problems that we had to solve, almost like word problems, like quizzes, but they were very, very difficult, and you required just a breadth of math knowledge to solve them. So
is that kind of like going to this source? Like if you're taking classes from Hungarian math professors, like isn't a lot of academic breakthroughs in math historically from Southeast Central Europe, or like a lot of academic and focus there?
I think the reason that program was started in Budapest was that there were a bunch of Hungarian mathematicians that wanted to introduce that style of teaching to America. It was started in the late 80s, so still before the Soviet Union fell. And there's this famous Hungarian Jewish mathematician called Paul Erdős, who was a part of the program even until he passed away in the early 2000s. Very famous Hungarian mathematician. But one of the things that I learned from going to that program is that it wasn't that there was a lot of famous mathematicians coming out of Hungary, which there were, but just the way math was taught in Hungary at the high school level, at the elementary level, which is so fundamentally different from the way it was taught in America, that they had high standards. They introduced these higher level concepts to younger students in a way that was approachable but still challenging. So they really, I think, tested their mettle in high school. And that was where this problem solving course came from. It was literally a book of like high school problems that they would give to like math kids as quizzes in high school in the 50s and 60s. So just that style of like mathematical literacy, love of learning, was just permeated in that area of the world.
It's so interesting you say that, because I literally was just having a conversation earlier today with some other women about this, that, the way that we're taught math in the US is one that is like very like rote and memorization and regurgitation. And it's not about these like deeper level concepts and ways of thinking about math. And indeed, when we introduced, the Common Core state standards and states started adopting them, that was like a big focus, was to switch the way we taught math to be one that was more like critical thinking driven and conceptually driven, and not just like, 2 times 2 = 4. And people in the US really fought it. And to this day, we're still fighting about it, frankly. It's died down because we have 1 or 2 other bigger problems to solve, COVID. But like, it's just interesting to me that like when you leave the US, that particular way of thinking is actually really embedded in the way that people teach math and science. And it's just not been a part of the American system. Don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I have a lot of thoughts on it. Math and science literacy is just so important. And one of the things that really bugs me when I tell people that I'm a math major, or that I studied math, or that I do math or computer stuff, is that when people say, "Oh, I'm just not a math person," or "I could never do that." The thing is that people can do that. People can be math people if they want to be, and if they're taught in the right way. Everybody learns differently. Everybody learns in different ways, and really, it's just putting the practice to it. It's the same thing with learning an instrument. This is what I tell people: if you never played the guitar and you picked up a guitar, you wouldn't expect yourself to start playing Stairway to Heaven. Maybe just strum a few chords, if that, out of tune notes. But you would expect to take practice and years of learning and study to get to that place. A lot of with math, you're given a problem and you can't solve it right away, and you get discouraged. And the fact is that it takes practice. It takes practice, which is why people give students a lot of homework, is to try to get that practice, which can be frustrating and difficult for people to, if they don't have a lot of time after school to do the homework. But people just shouldn't get discouraged. And everyone can do, I believe that everyone with the right teaching and enough time, I think, can learn very basic math and science concepts. Everyone can be literate in math and science. I think it's really important. I think those skills are just very important for people to have. The same way that it's important to learn how to read and write. I think it's important to learn how to add and subtract, do fractions, know that like the rate of change is different from like the value of something. And I think it's important. Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this as someone that really didn't believe that I was good at math for years and now use math all the time. And so we could talk about this all day. But let's talk more about you, Sam. Less about me, more about you. Okay. So you leave college and you decide on another adventure. You move to Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah.
How did you get to Madison? What brought you there?
So it was my last semester of college, and I had decided after going to Budapest that I did not want to go to grad school right away. The math was hard enough that I said, I know what, I need to take a break. I need to figure out what I really want to do. I'm going to get a job. And so I had gone to a career fair from the Natural Sciences Career Fair earlier in this semester, like in September, and I was graduating in December. And I believe that I had left my resume with the career services people because in November, without any like hearing from companies at all, I got an email out of the blue from the company in Madison called Epic. They do electronic medical records. And they said, we would like you to apply for this technical services / problem solver position. And I thought, this is odd. I've never heard of this company. Let me make sure that they're actually real. And it turns out that they are, and that they're a huge electronic medical record company. In fact, they're probably the leader of electronic medical records in the country. And
I see their name on all my online record stuff.
Exactly. And so I applied and I went through a series of interviews. And I remember I flew up to Madison for an on-site interview the same day that I took my very last final exam for college. So I took my last final exam in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I caught a plane to Madison for
Adulting.
Yes. My very first hashtag adult thing to do. And this was like December 15th. So everything was cold. There was snow everywhere. And I'd experienced snow in Budapest for the first time, really. But this was like on a whole other level. And I ended up getting the job like a week or two later. And I thought, why not? This is new. I'm available to go to Madison. Let's try it out. And so they said, when can you start? They start once at the beginning of each month. I said, how about next month? So I started in January of 2011. Moved to Madison. I remember driving through snow all the way through Illinois. I got there and the lakes were frozen over. It was like moving to Mars. And it was, I got the hang of it. I experienced my first blizzard like a month in. And my car literally could not get out of my parking garage. There was too much snow on the ground. And I loved it. I made a bunch of friends. I explored. I went cross-country skiing. I went on farms. I, had a lot of cheese curds. It was highly
Madison.
recommend Madison.
Madison's cool. It's a capital city with a major university in it. Mm-hmm. Population's what, like 250,000, maybe more than that?
Yeah. At the time, it was like 300,000.
So it's a great city for a young recent college grad to feel around and meet people in.
Exactly. Yeah, I loved it. I lived when I first moved there. I lived in this like super nice apartment right by the campus of the campus of my work, not campus of the university. Mm-hmm. So the work is literally on a farm outside of town. And I got this super nice apartment because they had garage parking, which if you're living in the north, like the parking situation is a whole thing, depending on how much you want to shovel your car out of the snow every day. And so I was new. I wanted like this. I got the super nice thing, which is garage parking. 6 months later, I moved into like an apartment, like close to downtown on like the funky street, Williamson Street, with outdoor uncovered parking, and which I had to scrape the ice off my car every day. And it's when I first got there, my brother and I drove up together. I think the first day in Madison, there was so much ice on the windshield, and I thought, well, we'll just have to wait here until it defrosts. And so we sat in our car for like 30 minutes while the car defrosted, not knowing that you're supposed to scrape the ice off. That was very much a rookie mistake. But
I love this just for a moment, because Jacob and I realized as we were prepping for today that we talk a lot about going abroad, but the US is actually so big, and going abroad is very expensive. Again, who is privileged enough to be able to do that and have those experiences? And it's not to say that moving anywhere else in the US is cheap or easy to do and doesn't come with costs and its own set of privileges. But compared to moving to Europe, for example, it's a lot less expensive to do. And you can have these like totally out of place new experiences that expose you to different ways of living and different ways of scraping ice off of your car, should that be what you want.
Yes.
Just by like thinking about other places in the US where you could go and have these sorts of experiences, which it sounds like you had.
Yes, I'm very happy that I chose to go to Madison because I had those experiences. I would not have had the experience of living in the Midwest, of living where there's all this snow. The winters were winter, but the summers were amazing.
Right, different ways of living. How was the job? Because you didn't stay there very long. You ended up coming back to Texas pretty quickly.
Well, I was there for 2 years, and I learned a lot on that job. I was doing they called the role like tech support or technical services. And so I did some programming, some quality assurance, some project management, a little bit of everything. I got to travel to our customers maybe once every 2 months or so. So I was exposed to a lot. And I'd taken some basic programming courses in college, but not really gone too deep into it. And so this really exposed me to much more modern and contemporary way of like computer science and just being in a large company and working together, trying to solve problems, coming up, managing your time wisely, dealing with customers. It was a broad exposure to a lot of different things. I learned a lot. And they put me on the medical billing, the professional billing software part of the application. So I learned a lot about medical insurance and billing insurance companies and patients and what's an allowed amount, what's a disallowed amount. And I made a lot of friends, and I enjoyed my time at Epic. I'm really glad I went. I'd recommend anybody else go work there. But in the end, I decided that I wanted to do something else, that I was motivated much more by like the science part of my job. I wanted to do more sciencey, more engineering type things. I wanted to do, I decided that I literally wanted to be a rocket scientist, that I wanted to do satellite stuff. I wanted to do cutting edge space things. And so I went back to school to start that journey.
So was that easy getting back into school? Like, what was, you came back to Texas, right? And then you decided to do school? I
actually started to go back to school in Wisconsin. I signed up for an afternoon course in basic engineering at University of Wisconsin, Rock County, which is in Janesville, which was like an hour away from my job. So after work on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Mondays and Wednesdays, I like drove through farmland to go to this course. And that lasted all of 2 weeks because it was way too much work. It was too much traveling.
Right.
I rented a textbook. I never returned it. So I ended up buying a textbook. I have like a mug from University of Wisconsin, Rock County, which is where Paul Ryan is from, Janesville. But
I'm to fame for something.
Yeah. And so I started that process there. It turns out it wasn't a good idea. It was too much all at once. So I quit my job and moved back home to San Antonio. And I decided that I wanted to be an engineer. And I thought I should just go to grad school for a master's degree. I thought maybe I'll get a second undergrad, but then I thought that's just the amount of time spent in classes. I thought, never mind. Let me see if I can just go to grad school instead. And after emailing a bunch of different admissions departments, some said, go ahead and apply. Some said, well, apply. Maybe we'll see if you have enough credits. So it was very much a case-by-case basis. So I thought the best thing to do is just to start taking some undergrad engineering courses and then work my way up to the point where I can confidently apply to grad school. And so to do that, I went community college in San Antonio, taking Physics 1 and Gen Chem 1. This is because I was an out-of-state student for a year. So to
right, because
tuition costs, I went to community college for a year.
How was your experience at community college? We've never talked about community college here. This is the first opportunity we've had. So we'd love to hear what you thought of the experience.
I mean, it was great. I thought I had, like a strong background in math and like the physics and chemistry. It was pretty, like, to me, it wasn't too challenging. But I had I had a positive experience. If I was, for people in my situation, I would highly recommend that route, community college.
Yeah, there's such a celebration of community college now on the part of the federal government. Dr. Jill Biden works for community colleges, has invested in them for a long time. The federal education department has moved there. And, we've talked about in terms of like a substitution for four-year degree programs, which it certainly is, but this is like another way in which community colleges are actually like really serving communities and people and their aspirations, is that you could go there for much cheaper than like enrolling at UT, I'm sure. any of the UT system, and you could take these supplementary courses to further your own education, to further your career ambitions, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yes. And so then I took those courses at community college, and then I was ready. I had put in enough time so that I could go to like UT Austin as a in-state student. And I tried to get into the Department of Engineering at UT Austin, the College of Engineering. But when you come in as a non-degree seeking student, as a special student, you come in under your old major, which for me in math was the College of Natural Sciences. So the process after, and I, spoke to a lot of different people in a lot of different departments at UT Austin. The process was you come in as your old major, and then you internally transfer from natural sciences to engineering, just as any freshman undergrad who wants to transfer into the College of Engineering would do. And because those procedures are still the same, they look at your freshman year classes, like your physics 1, your first year calculus. And, when I was 18 years old, first year of college, I didn't give my calculus class enough respect, and I didn't do well enough in that class. And I got a C in my first semester. And lo and behold, that was fall of 2006. Then fall of 2013, the admissions person's looking at my transcript and saying, well, you got a C in calculus, so you better do very, very well in your physics in order to get into engineering. And I thought, I have a degree in math. Like I've done the work. Like, I think I've proven my bona fides. Like, can't you just let me in? Why do I have to prove myself again in this manner? But that was the reasoning. And so I still went through that application process, but then days before the semester was supposed to start, they told me that they just didn't have any room in the College of Engineering. And so I couldn't transfer. And so I couldn't take any engineering courses at UT Austin. And there wasn't any time to transfer elsewhere. So I took just some more physics and math and computer science courses at UT Austin that fall, which actually were helpful and beneficial. But it was just this very Kafkaesque moment.
So, but you're a PhD now, right? You are a PhD candidate, correct?
Yes, I am all but dissertation.
Oh my God, I'm so close to there. Tell me the light is there.
Yes, I'm all but dissertation. I'm in the process of doing my prelim exam, which will officially make me a PhD candidate. I've already done the qualifying exam, but the research is done. Now it's just the work and typing and writing it up.
How did you select the PhDs? Kind of keep it brief here, but getting towards the end. But how did you decide on that? That's a particular path.
So after I couldn't go to engineering courses at UT Austin, I went to UT San Antonio and was able to get into the College of Engineering there and took some mechanical engineering courses and wanted to get ready for grad school. So I joined a research lab there with Professor Millwater, and I did some math stuff. They put me in a bunch of I was doing some very complex math, not difficult, but complex numbers, mathematics with finite element methods. And I thought it was really interesting and neat, and I was learning a lot. And I was talking to Professor Millwater, and he said, you should really go for the PhD in grad school. You'll want to do more than masters. And fortunately, in the engineering world, for grad school, when you get a PhD, many colleges will cover your tuition and give you a stipend based on funding for engineering. A lot of that funding comes from the Department of Defense or National Science Foundation type funding. So I'm very fortunate, very privileged in the engineering world to be able to not have to pay for a grad school when you're a PhD student. And you get a stipend, and it's a job, you get a salary, and health insurance, that goes with it. So that is everything in PhD land.
Yeah, I think this is a really important distinction, and I will save our audience from me ranting about the fact that we don't fund all education PhDs, mine included. Thank you, Teachers College. But, funding them is important, and thinking about it as a career change, as a job, that so many people think PhDs, oh, you're just going back to school. It's actually not going back to school. It's actually leaving one job and whatever career you might be in and making a real career change and a job change.
Yeah.
And how does that resonate with you?
It resonates completely with me. Yeah. I mean, when you're in PhD, you're usually working with a professor, you're doing research and taking courses. So your job is your research, right? The courses are there to supplement the research. The courses are there to help you with your research job. And as part of your research, you're learning how to learn, you're learning how to look up stuff, you're learning how to come up with your own ideas, how to figure out new things that haven't been figured out before. A lot of the times when I would go to my professor and I would say, I'm not quite sure where to go from here. And he'll say, well, maybe try these avenues, but let me know how it goes. And so it's, really up to us to figure out our next steps and to do the actual implementation of that work. And those are work skills. Those are professional skills that you develop as part of your PhD. And so it's very much a career-based, degree plan, even though it's not like a professional like JD or MD type thing where you get like a license. It's very much preparing yourself for a professional career in either research or academics or any kind of really critical thinking type job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think people realize that those exams we take are essentially like professional exams. Like, do you know your shit? Can you go on to the next round? Speaking of the next round, we have to close out the show soon. So we are going to move into the rapid fire round. We're like Tina Fey as Sarah Palin, which is Sarah Palin again. Lord help us all. Sam, we're making you a playlist. What are the 3 songs or podcasts that would be on your playlist?
Okay. So right now, I've been listening to the Bo Burnham Netflix special Inside, the song, the internet song at the in the beginning, Welcome to the Internet. I had that on loop for like a week after I heard it. There's that. My tastes in music are the Hamilton Polka by Weird Al Yankovic. I'm listening to that.
Oh, nice.
Nonstop. And then a good, Love It or Leave It podcast, I would say, is on my playlist.
Love it. Yeah. What are you reading right now? I'm sorry, Jacob.
What am I reading?
Yeah.
So I always need to be reading more. I need to, it's always something I neglect. I wish I read more. But the book that I have in my end table that I'm like halfway through is The Looming Tower by Lawrence Wright, about Al Qaeda and the road to their growth in the 90s and the 2000s, the road to 9/11. And I actually, part of my English degree is I went to meet Lawrence Wright at his house in Austin. And I saw, he showed us all of his shoe boxes full of index cards that he kept all of his research book in. And you can tell when you read the book how well researched it is. So I'm in the middle of reading that. I need to pick it up again and finish it.
So one last rapid fire for you, Sam, is what are any guiding mantras that you've had that you'd like to share with our audience, anyone that might come through this video later in the future, or somebody who might actually follow a similar career or degree path that you've taken?
One thing one of my old bosses told me is, integrity and hard work are really the only 2 things you have. And, integrity and hard work are so important. And I try to live up to that as best I can. 'Cause, I remember when I first, went back to UT Austin for that bonus semester in the fall of 2013, I was taking this like undergrad physics course with a bunch of sophomores, and I was like 25 years old. These kids were like 19, and I didn't have the physics background that they had. They were well more versed in this, waves and optics than I was. And I remember like almost breaking down crying, walking away from RLM, not understanding the physics. And I had to tell myself in the middle of this, like, you had a great job in Madison. It was your decision to leave and go to grad school. This is all you're doing. No one made you do this.
I tell myself this every single day.
This was your choice, and it's okay, but this was your choice. So just roll with it. And yeah,
I love that.
That class was hard, but I made an A in it in the end.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, this has been an amazing hour with Sam Friedman. Thank you to our community, to everyone in our liberal arts MBA community for joining us today. We can't wait to see you for episode 9 next week with Charlinda Brewster, a good friend of mine who is a graphic designer extraordinaire. We've not featured an artist yet, so I'm so thrilled to bring Charlinda on. Jacob, tell everyone where they can find us again.
So thank you so much for watching Liberal Arts MBA. You can find us on the following networks. You can follow us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Liberal Arts MBA. You can find us on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search up Liberal Arts MBA. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We have a page, Liberal Arts MBA, search for us. But right now we've been streaming under, today we've been streaming under Sarah's profile. So feel free to connect with her and connect with me on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect, but also follow us there. You can also find our profiles on Instagram and Twitter. And if you're there, you'll see we have posts with links going to our survey. So please, our wonderful community, if you're watching this today, please take our survey. If you come across our social assets and see our social posts, please click on the survey link. Thank you so much for being here, Sam. I just want to thank you personally. My old buddy, pledge brother.
Really nice.
Sam's amazing. Community, you are amazing. We are better than rocket scientists in some way, shape, or form. We will shoot you off into the whole meta universe out there right from your computer. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Same time, same place.